the Steel Secretary of India, Mr. Nagendra Nath Sinha. Mr. Sinha, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Indeed, a pleasure to have you on ET now. Mr. Sinha, allow me to take the clock back. And 2 quarters ago, the government had imposed an export duty on steel exports. And the thought was that global metal prices are going higher. It was imperative to control inflation. Now that steel prices are trending up higher and China demand is opening up, could government revisit the export tax on steel exports?
Not at this moment. We are not. We are monitoring the price situation, but we are not contemplating or thinking about any imposing an export duty at this moment.
That comfort zone beyond which things could go from comfort to the discomfort zone, is there an underlying price which would be in benchmark to decide that?
So there is no underlying price below which becomes uncomfortable for the government and leads to imposition of any measures. So that depends on various factors, and certainly those situations have not reached now. And how it moves, how it behaves is a thing of the future, and I can't contemplate any such situation happening right now.
I'm not speculating, sir, but I'm simply curious. When you say that you're monitoring the situation, what are the variables which you're monitoring, which you right now think are in comfortable zone, but if those variables, whether it is demand, price, or inflation, if they change, you will be forced to revisit it. I mean, I'm just trying to understand the variables which you monitor.
We monitor the prices of input materials. We monitor the prices of the products in different categories. And I mean, although they have risen somewhat over their lowest levels, which reached about 4 to 5 months ago, but the situation has not reached such a level where one could contemplate any such measures which were taken in the past about 3 quarters ago.
Sinha, we must say that's a lot of homework that goes into monitoring all these key parameters. But tell us what happens to exports at large then, because although India became a net importer of steel because of the imposition of export duty in the first half of FY23, exports have started rising yet again. And, since India has the capacity and ability to export, given its positioning in the global markets, are you at the ministry working on ramping up exports further?
See, it depends on various factors, including the demand in other countries as well. So export market. So while Indian demand itself is quite strong, and this year the demand itself has risen about 12% or so. If you see the export figures of this year, they were about 5.9 million tons. But we should also keep in mind that the export figures would have come down because the export duty was in place from May to November onward, May till November. So that would have been a dampening factor. Now that those duties have been removed, so I guess all those impeding factors to exports have been removed, and it depends on the demand situation elsewhere, the price situation in the world markets, and the India's own steel makers' competitive position vis-a-vis them. So I guess the situation is somewhat reasonable for the exporters, but let's see how it moves, because there are developments in other markets. For example, Turkey, there's would be a large-scale reconstruction effort, and I would tend to assume that Indian steel makers would also be craving for a pie of that kind of a demand.
Oh yes, after those earthquakes, surely. But you touched upon a very, very pertinent point. Perhaps you would be best positioned to give us an insight on how global demand is. Because at a time when you have growth concerns and economies slowing down across Europe as well as US in particular, but at the same time China now opening up. What can you tell us about global demand at this point?
If you see the World Steel Association forecast, they forecast about 1% growth in demand in the FY24. And as far as the demand in certain key countries are concerned, for example, taking China, its government has announced that they intend to have 5% rate of growth in the calendar year 23 as compared to 3% that they achieved. If we see US, the Q3 growth rate is about 3.4% as compared to Q2, which was about 0.4% or so. Elsewhere, people are expecting recoveries, but not of very significant order. So I guess in certain key countries where the demand might come through the efforts of reconstruction, elsewhere, apart from China, the market is almost either flat or growing very slowly. So, I mean, that kind of a demand push from the global demand situation, we don't see much.
That's quite interesting and gives us great insight, Mr. Sinha. Thank you so much for that. But, I have to talk about divestment as well. The government, which currently holds 60.8% in NMDC, intends to sell 50.8% stake in the company. We believe the government has already received multiple expression of interest for this stake sale. What can you tell us about it? What is the current update?
So the position of the government with regard to the NMDC is quite clear. It's not divesting anything from the NMDC stake. We are, of course, going for the strategic divestment of the Nagendra Nath Steel Limited, which has been demerged from the NMDC now. So that's the only thing on the offer as far as the NMDC is concerned. We are, of course, for the strategic divestment of the RINL as well as the FSNL, Ferrous Scrap Nigam Limited.
So in terms of also another update, sir, some plants of sale. Now there is an intention that Government of India has indicated that they are looking at selling few non-viable plants of sale. What's the update on that?
As far as the washery iron and steel plant was concerned, we had taken out expression of interest and no interest came. So the DIPAM has indicated that the effort should be taken for its closure and the process is on. As far as the alloy steel plant is concerned, the divestment efforts were made and now those didn't come to a conclusion. So the Steel Authority of India itself has been asked to look for different options. We are also moving forward towards divestment of disinvestment in the Salem steel plant, but that is still underway and it will take some time before we come to a conclusion of the process.
We at our end also, Mr. Nath, have been speaking with a whole host of analysts and, talking about the sale disinvestment. And most of them believe that, there is no headroom left for incremental volume growth in sale until the company actually goes for large scale Capex. Are you looking at that? Are you exploring that opportunity to make sale more viable for disinvestment then?
We are not looking at the disinvestment in the Steel Authority of India Limited. In fact, we are looking forward for Capex and as per a preliminary exercise conducted, we could look at Capex growth of about 15 to 16 million tons in about 7 to 10 years time.
Proposed capacity for sale could be, sir, in terms of millions per ton in next 5 years?
Next 5 years, we should see something like about 25 or so.
And what is the planned capex for Steel Authority of India?
Planned Capex is the earlier Capex cycle has come to an end, and we are looking towards enhancing its capacity to about 35 million tons by about 7 to 8 years, I said, by about 31 or so.
Mr. Sinha, I'm sorry if this is sounding like a disinvestment calendar that we are trying to dig out, but we also would like to know about Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, RINL, and as to what is the centre's plan when it comes to that disinvestment.
We are on course.
So have you already received expressions of interest, and are they looking viable?
Those documents are yet to issue, but many players have expressed their interest in acquiring those stakes, and it's a very interesting place. The plant is a solar-based plant. It has a significant amount of land holding. It also has a place for expansion. So all in all, it's a place which would be quite conducive to raising its capacity if the investor is ready to invest and could potentially raise the capacity of the plant to about 20 million ton or so. And therefore, it's a great place for making investment for any investor who comes forward.
Mr. Sinha, there is always this whole debate about the availability of coal. First availability, and then second accessibility, and then availability, accessibility, and then quality. These are long-term challenges. How do you think they are getting addressed? Because every time when we speak to SAIL or some of the private players, they are in a sense saying that, look, we see that steel demand going higher, but unfortunately, it's availability and dependence on imported coal, which is in a sense crippling the growth of the sector.
I mean, we have to accept the reality that the Indian coal stocks and reserves are not such that they would be in a position to meet the demand of the entire steel production that might come through in about 10 years' time. Even now, we are importing about 90% of the coal from Australia and some other countries. Now, there is a mission coal which has been announced by the Ministry of Coal, and in this, not only the coking coal production from the mines of the Bharat Coking Coal Limited and the Central Coalfield Limited of the Coal India Limited is being asked to be increased, but additional washery capacities are also being set up. For example, Coal India intends to raise its washery capacity from 12 million tons now to about 45 million tons. The Steel Authority of India would also be raising its coal washing capacity from about 2 million tons to about 6 million tons. Tata Steel would also be raising its coal washery capacity to about 10 million tons. So the efforts are underway to utilize whatever coal reserves could be employed from the stock of available in the Indian mines. But the fact would remain, considering the demand that will come up on account of the enhancements in capacities and the need to feed the existing plants. we would largely be dependent on the imports. The efforts are now being on way or underway, which the sources of coal need to be diversified. And we are looking at different options that are available to the country. Of course, the dependence on coal could come down provided we make a switch to DRI, hydrogen-based DRI, and the government of India has launched the National Green Hydrogen Mission. So, if that mission is able to supply significant volumes of hydrogen at prices which are affordable to the steel makers, I guess that would bring down the dependence on the coal and imported coal to that extent down. But it's a medium range thing rather than a short term thing, and we'll till that time we'll need to be working towards the measures that I mentioned, diversification of sources of import, and getting additional capacities through the Coal India Limited mines, as well as setting up of new washeries.
Right. Mr. Nath, such a pleasure to have you today on ET Now. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.